Going into this, I knew that cannibalism was a thing. Sure, we hear about tribes that have been known to eat trespassers. Examples like how the cannibals from New Guinea ate the heir to Rockefeller's fortune, or the American missionary who was allegedly killed by an endangered tribe living on a remote Indian island. But these are isolated incidents, right? These men were somewhere where they didn't belong. In researching this video, I discovered that cannibalism actually happens more frequently than I thought. Through history, and even today, these things happen. Some cultural, some to send a message. What is the first thing that crosses your mind when you hear about people eating other people? Europe has the oldest fossil evidence of cannibalism. In 1991, archaeologists found 100,000-year-old Neanderthal and animal remains. One archaeologist says that modern humans ate Neanderthals. He found a jawbone in 2009 with butcher markings and missing teeth. The archaeologist said that the jawbone was dressed the same way as the animal carcass in the Stone Age. The jawbone was stripped of flesh with stone tools. He then said that the teeth were made into a necklace. The Neanderthals disappeared 30,000 years ago at the time of modern humans appearing in Europe and Africa. The archaeologists felt that the jawbone represents evidence that modern humans in Europe killed and ate Neanderthals and took the remains as trophies. Spain and Europe used medicinal cannibals. The Inquisition executed heretics from the 11th to the 18th century. These executions were public events. Epileptics went to executions to pay for a bowl of red. Europeans believed human blood cured seizures. Apothecaries sold mummies. The Muslim dug mummies from Egyptian pyramids and shipped them to Europe with rumors that they cured illnesses. French King Francis I always carried mummified flesh in his purse, fearing no accident if he had but a little of that with him. An author wrote, "Mummy has great force in staunching of blood." The shipment stopped in the 14th century. The Europeans still wanted mummies, but they received beggar and camel flesh, which was counterfeit. Pharmacists began to cure dead bodies like ham. Gourmands cured dead bodies in vats of honey and herbs. This is some of the things that they used to do with coagulated mummy blood. Purging the head. They used it to get rid of a cough. Inflation of the body, so gas or bloating. Obstruction from the menstrual cycle, and other uterine afflictions. They used it externally as a service for consolidating wounds, so like a wound dressing. They recommended the skin be used in difficult labors and hysterics, which, if you don't know, hysterics is a diagnosis for women that started in 1900 BC. Of course, as time went on, doctors were like, hey, if the mummy corpses can do this, fresh corpses could be better. So then, fresh corpses became popular. Doctors wouldn't leave a body out for longer than 3 days. A German doctor wrote, "The cadaver of a reddish man, because in such a man the blood is believed to be lighter, so the flesh was better. The body of a reddish man, whole, fresh, without blemish, of around 24 years of age, dead of a violent death, not of illness, that's exposed to the moon rays for 1 day and night, is treated so that it comes to resemble a smoked, cured meat without any stench." Europeans paid a hefty price to eat men who had been hung in execution because when they died, erections were virile symbols in an idiocentric society. Europeans ate hung men for sexual powers. Ritual cannibalism is the eating of human flesh and bones for religious purposes. This was an old age tradition shared throughout a large portion of the Mesoamerican world. Splintered human bones appeared in the garbage at the pre-classic Olmec site of San Lorenzo, Veracruz. This suggested that someone had gnawed on them. A 16th century friar told us that humans were used for sacrificial feasting. Commoners offered things like quail and other edible things. This is because providing a human for a sacrificial meal was a most honored obligation, so it was reserved for the noble class. It's reported that the food was delicious and tasty, hot for the gods since the flesh was sweet and pleasant to them. Cannibalistic dishes varied, although the most common method was to cook corn in one pot and the meat in another, and when done, served up with bowls of stewed corn topped with small pieces of cooked human flesh. The core months for cannibalism were in the winter, roughly November through February, when the world was dry and the Aztec warriors were abroad battling for captives. None really occurred during the core wet summer months, roughly like June through September, when all were busy growing food. But cannibalistic rituals did occur at the nerve-wracking height of the dryness when drought threatened everybody, May through June. And just before the rainy season, of course, they also did it then. Another came at the end of the growing season, September, when both windy and dangerous thunderstorms and the fall equinox marked the shift of agriculture and the upcoming season of war. So basically, they did it all year. Pork most likely resembles the taste and texture, said the Aztecs, who before the arrival of the Spanish in 1519 were enthusiastic practitioners of cannibalism, and who in the 1520s received domesticated pigs from the Spanish invaders. The similarities probably reflect the diet of swine, which, like people, are omnivores and lack the delicate flavor of grain roughage and flour-fed animals, or the gamey bouquet of carnivores. Both species exercise just enough to keep some muscle tone, but not too much to be gristle. While there's no doubt that the Aztecs were cannibals, they readily admitted to the Spanish chroniclers that they had strict rules about when human flesh could be eaten, who could be consumed, and who were the guests at the banquets that occurred on the annual cycle of agriculture rituals. They didn't practice a culinary free-for-all, nor did they inhale every single morsel of the body. Instead, when they ate another person, it was intimately tied to ideas of transforming human flesh into a highly potent substance that conveyed life force, and that could only be eaten by other people who were already halfway to being gods themselves. The Portuguese ship Aragante was captured in late November 1837 by the HMS Snake off the coast of Cape San Antonio in Cuba. At the time of her capture, the Aragante had more than 330 Africans on board who had all been embarked at Galenas. All of them were liberated soon after the vessel reached Montego Bay, Jamaica, where, soon after arrival, the chilling mystery surrounding the alleged practices carried out by her captain and crew were also brought to the attention of local authorities. Shortly after landing, the captain and crew were accused of killing an African man, cooking his flesh and serving it to the rest of the slaves on board. Additionally, they were also accused of eating the heart and liver of a murdered man. The story these children and young men and women told was simply harrowing. According to many of them, a few days before being seized by the British cruiser, one of them, a grown man called Mina, who, according to the descriptions given, was not a black man but a yellow man, was forced to drink alcohol. Then, after being taken behind a sail on the bow, he was slaughtered. Although, as one would expect, the minor specifics of the testimonies of the witnesses were a little bit consistent, but most of them agreed that the man cried out for help as he was being killed, and that the blood remained on deck until the next day. Some witnesses claimed that his head, hands, and feet were cut off and thrown overboard, and the rest of him was cut up in small pieces and squares and served to the rest of the Africans on board for food. Furthermore, in a very revealing testimony, one witness stated that Mina's heart and liver were also cooked and eaten by the Portuguese sailors. Despite very credible reports, the magistrate plainly refused to believe that the Aragante sailors could be capable of undertaking such a barbaric and immoral practice such as cannibalism. A much closer case, though, both in time and substance, is the schooner Amistad, which on her way from Havana to the eastern part of the island in Cuba, was taken over by Africans imprisoned aboard. The Africans of Amistad had originated from the same West African region as those of the Aragante, and their uprising had taken place a year and a few months after Aragante's Africans were forced to endure their Atlantic crossing. Here, according to the existing records, the Amistad's cook, a racially mixed man named Celestino, decided to repeatedly tease the Africans by making gestures with his knife, drawing the blade's edge across his throat, and making a chopping motion with his hands to show that their bodies would be hacked into bits by these white men. Celestino pointed to a barrel of salted beef, implying that it was filled with bodies of Africans who had made a previous voyage. The fear of being killed, cooked, and eaten, felt by Amistad's Africans, which led them to confront their captors, was by no means unique. Fear of white cannibalism has existed in West and West Central Africa since at least the 16th century. From the beginnings of the age of the European expansionism into the Atlantic, Africans seem to have been wary of the prospect of being eaten by white men. Historical evidence suggests that at least from the 16th century onward, the Portuguese were told in West Africa and Africans believed that Christians ate human flesh and that all the slaves they bought were carried away to eat. The very experience of being carried to the coast and being put on a crammed ship governed by never-before-seen white men may have played a significant role in the existence of such beliefs. As historian Joseph C. Miller argued, the darkness of the slave ship hold was a scary environment for growth of ambiguous fears of Portuguese cannibalism. Armin Muse is a German man who achieved international notoriety for killing and eating a voluntary victim who he found on the internet. Looking for a willing volunteer, Muse posted an advertisement on the website The Cannibal Cafe, which was a blog website that was for people with cannibal fetishes. Muse post stated that he was looking for a well-built 18 to 30-year-old to be slaughtered and then consumed. Bernard Brandes, an engineer from Berlin, then answered the advertisement. Many other people responded but then backed out. Muse didn't attempt to force them to do anything against their will. The two made a videotape when they met in Muse's home in the small town of Rottenburg, showcasing Muse amputating Brandes and the two men attempting to eat it together before Brandes' ultimate demise. Brandes had insisted that Muse attempt to bite his penis off. That didn't work, and ultimately Muse used a knife to remove it completely. Brandes apparently tried to eat some of his own penis raw, but couldn't because it was tough and, as he put it, it was chewy. Muse then fried it in a pan with salt and pepper, wine and garlic, and then he fried some for Brandes. They decided that it was too burned to eat, so then he chopped it into chunks and ended up feeding it to his dog. According to court officials who saw the video, which hasn't been made public and is lost media, Brandes may already have been too weakened from the blood loss to eat any of his own part. Muse read a book for 3 hours while Brandes lay bleeding in the bathtub. Muse then gave him large quantities of alcohol and painkillers, 20 sleeping pills, and a bottle of schnapps, kissed him, and finally killed him in a room that he had built in his house for this purpose, a total slaughter room. After stabbing Brandes to death in the throat, he hung the body on a meat hook and tore chunks of flesh from it. He tried to grind the bones and use them as flour. The incident was recorded on a 2-hour videotape. Muse ate the body over the next 10 months, storing body parts in the freezer under pizza boxes and consuming up to 44 pounds of flesh. According to prosecutors, Muse committed the act for sexual enjoyment. The tape, confiscated by police, which is a very sought-after item by gore websites and forums, has been held under lock and key by German authorities ever since. The only time it was shown to an audience was during Muse's trial, after which some attending journalists required therapy. 4 alleged screenshots from the video have come to light online. However, their validity has never been officially proved or disproved. Muse's original charge of manslaughter, carrying an 8-year sentence, was escalated to murder in 2005 in a retrial. He's currently serving a life sentence in Kassel prison in Germany.